And now, can we go live on mine too?
You would have to do a watch party, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Okay. I can show you that afterwards. It's no problem. Redirecting. Let's see. All right. Let me just go to my page, make sure we're actually streaming. I think we are. I think we're live, but let me just confirm that and then we'll get started. Normally check on my phone, but I forgot to do that. There we go. We're live.
Awesome.
All right. Come back to you. There you are. Good morning, Kelly Duncan Smith. How are you?
Great, Brian Mira. How are you, honey?
I'm great. I'm great. Stuck in the house like everybody else, but from what we hear, maybe not that much longer, which would be great, right?
Be great. I'm on day 36.
36. I stopped counting. Listen, with 5 kids, after day 3, they all blend. It doesn't even matter, you know? So I'm excited to have you on here live today. My goal with building up my new page, The Virtual Entrepreneur, is to do an interview at least once a week, bring on highly successful people across different industries, targeting, entrepreneurs, people that want to work from home in all different aspects, right? Real estate, network marketing, insurance. I mean, you name it. We have a whole lineup, which is going to be great. But I'm really excited today because you and I obviously have a very similar background. We know each other from working in a different company with health and wellness, but we're also, our careers have basically been built around real estate. So why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about your background? I mean, as far as you being an agent, when did you get involved, and tell us a little bit about what got you to where you are today.
Okay. So I have been a real estate agent for, dating myself, 27 years. I was in my early 20s when I started, mid 20s when I started real estate. It has been very, very good to me. I had my own business for 7 years, divorced, and then went to work for Keller Williams. I was with Keller Williams for 14 years, and a year and a half ago, I popped over to EXP, and I have been hanging my hat there ever since.
Okay. So you, I know nobody likes to toot their own horn, but guys, if you're tuning in watching, if you're on Zoom, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, wherever you're watching this, maybe you're seeing the replay. Kelly is a phenomenal businesswoman. Okay. She's a top producer, call her whatever you want, mega agent, 7-figure earner. She's the best of the best. And why I really, Kelly, wanted to have you on here today to talk to everybody is that with the times that we're in, with this pandemic, with this quarantine, everybody's stuck from home. And specifically, we're talking today to real estate agents. Now, also investors, because I know a lot of real estate investors, of which I'm both an agent and an investor, they either have their license just as like a, I don't know, as a benefit, right? Access to the MLS, et cetera. But there's a lot of investors watching that have been considering getting their license. And I think that we're talking to both audiences today. So from your perspective, all these years, and I didn't even ask you this, this is just coming out of the blue. Have you ever got involved on the investing end, or have you just solely been an agent?
No, I've flipped properties. I've had rental properties. Actually, I've got a couple of them under agreement right now that I'm selling up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So yeah, I've done the short sales. I've done the trainings. I've done the gamut of just about. I never really got into the commercial real
Right.
estate end of things, but other than that, I've done just about everything that you can do in real estate.
Gotcha. Well, 27 years, that's a nice track to kind of do it all,
Right.
So you, and I think this is what's so unique and why our audience is really excited to hear from you today. You run your business pre-pandemic, pre-quarantine, completely remote and virtual. Now you live in Florida, right?
Yes.
But you have a large business in Massachusetts.
Yes.
So you're literally running in 2 states, but you work remotely for everything. How did that come about? Can you tell us a little bit about how you started just being a remote virtual realtor?
Yeah, it's Mass and Connecticut. But I've been in Florida for the last 3 years. So it's kind of I'm going to do a long story short.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was pregnant for my youngest. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'll call you back, honey. Sorry, I thought I blocked it, but I guess
That's all right. It's all good.
So when I was pregnant for my youngest son, I was hit by a drunk driver, and it was a really bad accident, and I hurt my neck and my back really badly, and the baby ended up being fine. Had the baby, my other 2 kids were in the car, everybody was fine, life goes on. And I started getting these shooting pains. I've always been a jogger. Now I walk, but I was a jogger for years. And I would get these shooting pains down my legs, and I kept going to the doctors, and I'd go to doctor after doctor, and then try to give me codeine or Percocet. I'm like, Irish American, like, don't like, I don't want that stuff. Like, I'll be on the corner of Fifth and Lime. Do
Right.
not like, kidding, guys. So-
Hey, I'll self-medicate. A little bit of whiskey, wine. I'm half Irish. I'm good.
There with a nice Italian dinner, I'm good. But on and off for years, I kept going to different doctors, and they would say it was tendonitis, it was a groin pull, it was you name it, and they just kept trying to give me a prescription, and I didn't want a prescription. I wanted to be better. So I went to acupuncturist, and I went to I had a TENS unit. I went through all kinds of physical therapy. Nothing worked. Finally, I met my chiropractors. Now, mind you, my baby is now 16 years old. I went to a new chiropractor, and the new chiropractor said to me, "There's something seriously wrong with your hips." Really? Okay. Kind of rolling my eyes. Nothing wrong with my hips. My hips don't hurt. Well, he made me an appointment with New England orthopedic surgeons, and I went in, and the guy said, "You broke your hip in an accident somewhere 15, 20 years ago, and the other one was severely damaged."
Hmm.
So I had no idea, but I was walking around. I had a broken hip for 16 years, and it just formed wrong. So here I am, 47 years old, and it's, I couldn't go out at night. Like, my girlfriends would say, "Hey, let's go do this after work," and I'd be like, "Yes." And by like 2 o'clock, I was like, I'm canceling my 4 o'clock appointment. And by 5 o'clock, I would either be in an ice bath or, a hot shower, rubbing down with some. So in October, when they diagnosed me, they were booking out 6 months. So they booked my hip replacement for April 9th. I'm like, not spring market, not spring market. Can't we do it another time? Like, this is where, the you make the lion's share of your money. And I was a single mom with 3 little boys, but I couldn't take the pain anymore,
Hmm.
and I couldn't put it off. So I had a buyer's agent at the time that I didn't really quite know how to handle this. I didn't want to lose all that business. So I sent my buyer's agent out with his iPad, and I'd make the appointment, but he'd show up at the door, and he'd say, "Look, Kelly had a hip replacement. I'm here to walk through. We're going to do this virtually with her." And the people at first were like, "Oh, well, we were expecting Kelly." And he's like, "Yeah, she's laid up right now, but she's ready to do this." So Jim would go through the house with his iPad. I would do the whole tour, would sit down at the table. I would email them the comparative market analysis. We would go through everything. We would go through the profit and loss. We would go through, everything that you would do at a regular listing appointment.
Mhm.
And then he would sign the papers. And that was a few years ago. Fast forward a couple of years later, I need the other hip done. Again, it's April. It's spring market again. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Well, now I didn't have Jim anymore. He wasn't with me. So I just started making the appointments. And by the way, we listed, I think, 9 houses in 2.5 weeks doing that system. So it kind of made me realize, okay, there are other ways to skin a cat. So then I needed the other hip done. I think it was 4 years later. And that was in 2017. And so I said to, when I would call, I would still kept lead generating right up until the surgery. And I said, I'm going to be laid up for 4 or 5 days, but I would like to do the appointment virtually. And people were like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, going in for hip replacement, I've done this prior to. We did this before. I had tremendous success. We sold every single house." And people said, "Okay." I think one person said, "Well, I'm not really comfortable with that." And I said, "Well, if you want to wait a couple weeks," they waited a couple weeks, and I went in person. But for the most part, everybody was really good about it. So I said, "Well, we'd do it with their iPad or with their cell phone." And we would just go through, and we would do a virtual tour, and I'd do the exact same thing. So now we're fast forwarding a little bit. My husband and I came down to Florida for a couple weeks in the winter, and we kept extending our vacation because every time we'd get ready to go home, there was like 3 feet of snow coming in Massachusetts. So
Yeah.
I put on Facebook, due to inclement weather, we
Right.
will be forced to remain in Florida for another 2 weeks. So we ended up spending like 5 weeks down in Florida. And now I started saying to people, "Listen, I'm in Florida. I'm not going to be home for another 2 or 3 weeks. We can do one of two things. We can do this virtually, or, I'll be home in 2 weeks, or you have the option to list with somebody else, whatever works for you." And everybody was very gracious. And we're like, "Well, let's start with the virtual." And it became, organically, it just kind of developed into the system. Then it just became, as people would call and they'd say, hey, I want to put my house on the market. I'd say, great, I'm in Florida. Can we set up a virtual tour? Or I will be home on the 16th of the next month, or I'll be home on. And everybody's like, well, I want to get it on. Let's just try this, or let's just do this. Then it just became second nature. So for the last, that was 3 years ago, June, we moved here full time. And I go home now. When I go home to see Daisy Duncan, my 5.5-month-old brand new adorable granddaughter, and I go home to see my kids. I don't go home and have to say to the kids, well, we'll get dinner at 5 because I have to go to these 7 listing appointments in the 3 days that I'm here. Now, when I go home, I actually go home and I see my family, which is really nice. So it just kind of organically happened. And yeah, there's no, like, it's funny because people are like, oh, we can't work, in my hometown of Southwick, Massachusetts, there's usually between 40 and 50 houses on the market right now, usually at least 50 because it's spring market. And right now there's 16, and that's including one I just put on 2 days ago and 6 to be built. So there's 9, maybe 10 houses on the market in Southwick right now. And I'm like, guys, I was doing this when there was 4,000 of you that had legs that could go into, I had there was 4,000 of you that could have walked into that house. So if I could do it then we can all do it now.
Yeah.
So we just developed a system. And so now with the pandemic, we've taken it, I still do that step, but now we take it to the point of when we have showings, there's booties, there's masks. The homeowner leaves every single light on and every single door open, including the basement door.
Yeah.
The only thing that the agent has to touch is the lockbox, and they wipe it down when they leave. So everybody goes in, mask, they go in one at a time. So if it's a husband and a wife, they go in, the agent will unlock the door, she'll step back, let them walk through, and they're told not to touch anything. So it's and we're selling houses. We've listed 8 now since I've been in this house in 36 days.
Mhm.
So, and that's including like people freaking out, like, I don't know if I want anybody in my house. We go, I understand completely. This is the system that we do. Are you comfortable with that? And when they hear it, they're like, all right, we can do that.
I think it's a mindset. I mean, obviously, this whole concept of being a virtual realtor, a top producing one, came out of necessity because of your health challenges. Which, by the way, prior to this talk, I had no idea. You and I had never discussed that before. I didn't know that, so that's news to me. I'm like, wow, really? You know what I mean? So, and that's why I like to when I like to interview people and have these conversations. I don't want to know anything prior. I don't want to have any scripts. I just like having conversations and seeing how they develop. And you always learn new things about people. So that's amazing. But again, that was years ago. And now you're doing, 3 states, pandemic aside, you just listed there, 8 houses. And there's people who are saying that they just can't work and they just can't do it. And I think it's just because they don't know. They just don't know that it is possible, right? These self-limiting beliefs, as we talk about.
That's what I would think if I hadn't gone through what I went through.
Yeah.
I would still be in Massachusetts, just coming down for a couple months in the winter.
Right.
Because of a tragedy, I have a lifestyle that I love.
Yeah.
So, when they say everything happens for a reason, I truly believe that.
Absolutely. So let's talk to the agents that are watching this and that they want to, learn how to become a virtual agent, a virtual realtor, whether it's, and I guess there's really 2 components. You have your listing of homes and you have working with buyers. So what would some of your tips be to get started to becoming a successful virtual agent?
Okay, you're going to do everything like you normally would do. You're going to call your sphere of influence. Right now, it's really important to call people, and you don't call and go, hey, this is Kelly Duncan Smith. Do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in property? Nobody wants to hear that right now. But if you call and you say, how you holding up? How are the kids?
Yeah.
Oh, Susie's away at college. How's that going? How's that? Oh, well, she ended up coming home. You have just normal conversations and you say, are you still working? Because a lot of people aren't working right now. And they go, oh my God, this must stink for you. You're not working. I'm like, well, I never stopped working. And this is what we're doing. So if you do know anybody that's looking to buy or sell, we've got great systems in place. And I tell them a little bit about it and they go, wow, actually, my cousin was just saying that they were looking to buy. And I said, well, even if they're not comfortable going out right now, I'd love to talk to your cousin and we can do a phone, we can do a FaceTime and I can understand what they're looking for. And I can go out there and I can find through deed transfers what fits their needs, and I can start making some phone calls and see who might be a seller for them.
Mhm.
So when they are comfortable leaving the house, we might have 4 or 5 houses that aren't currently on the market that they have stuff to look at. How does that sound? They go, wow, that's great. They give me their cousin's number, and it just starts with honestly, genuinely caring about people, checking in on them. How are you doing? It's not like I have 2 boys that 2 out of 3 of my sons are still up in Massachusetts. So if I call somebody and they're like, we're not good, and my mom is old and I can't leave the house and this and that, I'm like, give me a list and Brennan will drop it at your door. It comes back down to people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And it's the sales will come when you take care of people.
Right. I think that warm market is huge, and I went through, I obviously got involved on the agent side. At least I've been involved in real estate for over 20 years. I started, my God, I don't even know. I guess I was 22, 21, 22. I started doing commercial lease auditing.
You're
So I was
about
kind of,
12.
yeah, exactly. That sounds good. I like that. But, I didn't get my license. So that was back in, years ago. And then of course I did many different things. I was a loan officer, all this other stuff. So I've been in the real estate industry per se for many, many years, but I didn't get my license until 2007 when I went through a divorce. And frankly, I needed money. You know what I mean? Now I'm sustaining 2 households. I have child support, alimony, the whole thing. And that's obviously before the crash. And, like they say, a blind dog with a note in his mouth could have sold real estate back then. But that launched me into short sales, right? And I lost my home in a foreclosure. So now I had a point of relatability for people that were going through this with the crash. And so, like you said, I mean, out of a tragedy, a divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure, cars repossessed, I was in the perfect position to relate to people. And I did exactly what you're talking about. Kelly, a lot of agents watching this and, investors, et cetera, there's many different ways to market. You could, yellow letter campaigns and mail drops. And, there's so many different ways to market, obviously, and online. I never did any of that, and I'm not saying obviously that stuff is effective, but farming neighborhoods and all that. But for me, I picked up the phone. I just picked up the phone, and exactly what you just said. I started off being a human being, relating to them. Hey, how have you been? How's John? Haven't talked to you in a while. And I would take my phone and go through the contacts and literally A to Z, just start calling people. And then, like you said, being a human being, reconnecting with them. Oh, by the way, I'm actually in real estate now. And just having it be a natural part of the conversation, right?
Right.
Which actually serves you well, also, especially now with what's going on. But for the agent who, they're wondering, okay, well, that sounds all fine and well. And do you ever run into people who don't want to do things virtually? Like they almost insist on a physical something.
Yeah. And, my son is also a real estate agent. I have a couple other agents. My admin is also licensed. I have girlfriends up there. If all of my people are busy, I just refer it. I
Okay.
say, "Look, I have an excellent agent that's right there. She can come over your house." It hasn't happened yet because everybody has, by the grace of God, waited for me. They've either said, we'll just wait. When are you coming home next? And so it's a little different right now because I don't know when I'm coming home next.
Yeah.
But before I could say, I knew like once a month I was going to be popping in for 3 or 4 days to see the kids, or once every other month for 4 or 5 days I would pop home and see everybody. So
And you sold your restaurant. You actually had a restaurant up in Massachusetts or Connecticut, right? But now you don't have to use that as an excuse to go back either, right?
right, exactly. That was oh, by the way, if you listen to nothing else I say, never open a restaurant.
Right. I've owned them in the past as well. I had a restaurant. So yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a tough
You
business.
have a restaurant too. Okay, wait a minute, Brian. We both are the health and wellness. We both used to work for KW. We're both at EXP, and we both used to own a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we both started our real estate careers at 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
And you said you're half Irish, right?
Yes.
I'm half Irish also. So it's like you're my sister from I don't know what.
That's awesome.
So, but no, it's been great, and I'm excited. Obviously, being, a virtual entrepreneur, I'm just kind of doing a rebranding for myself because I was just pigeonholed and known as a short sale expert for many years. I mean, after I did very well as an agent, I started investing, and we've done over 1,000 deals, and nationwide. I created the course with my good friend Jeff Watson, launched a coaching and mentoring program, speaking on stages. So I guess I did the quote guru thing for a while, education space, which was fun. It was great,
Right.
but then short sales started falling out of favor, and I realized that even back then, Kelly, even back then, I was doing short sales in all 50 states. And people would say, how do you do that? Like, how in the world? Well, I don't see the house. I don't meet the sellers. Like, I built a team of people. And I'm saying that because of what you just said. I think there's always going to be the need to have, in some sense, some boots on the ground for those rare occasions where you've been able to do 90, sounds like 98% of your business without that, which is amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have been. It's been awesome. And then like the buyers, but guys, like I have buyers agents up there right now. They're still working. They're still showing houses.
Mhm.
We just go armed, and we tell everybody, if you'd like to do this, we can go over the buyer's consultation on a Zoom call. We can sign any of the buyer's agreements. And when we go out, we'll provide mask, booty, gloves, sanitizers. When we call for a listing, we tell the seller, the selling agent, because people don't know, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We say, please tell your seller, leave on all the lights, leave all the doors open. We will touch nothing but the lockbox, and we will wipe it down when we leave.
Mhm.
So, they're still out there, and there's a lot of vacant houses, guys. Don't forget that. Like
Yeah.
3 houses that we have listed right now are vacant.
What are some of your other strategies with the success you've had? Obviously, after all these years, you have quite the referral network, and that's obviously served you well. New agents ask me that all the time. And when I used running my coaching on the investing side, I would say, hey, start with who you know, obviously. But then, of course, you run out of that. Eventually, you run through that. And unless you've been doing it for 27 years like you, especially in the beginning, you don't have those referrals. So what other types of marketing have you done, or with the newer agents that you work with and coach? What are some of the things that you find working today in this virtual environment?
Again, like I'm not big on all the marketing and stuff. Like we have some Zillow, but not a lot. Like most of everything that I've done with my warm market and my who we've met a lot of open houses. I'm huge on open houses. We can't do those right now, but I am huge on open houses. But I would say the biggest thing that we do is we stay in touch and we have get-togethers. So like we had a pizza party, called all of the past customers and said, come, bring whoever you want, just need a head count by next Friday. And I had 153 people in the room eating pizza and just hanging out. Like, it was
And drinking wine, I'm sure, right?
drinking wine. Drinking wine. And you know what? I think the whole thing cost me like $600, like tip included.
Mhm.
And that's like people will spend $3,000 on Zillow for a month, or they'll go spend, $600 like that on a couple of ads or to farm a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I prefer to like do something fun. Like you're having wine and pizza and they've got the kids are running around and everybody's having fun and everybody's talking. Who do you think they're going to think of when they're thinking of selling their house, or their cousin is going to sell their house? They're going to know that they're going to be in good hands with me and my team, that we're truly people that care. And, I had a guy that called me, this guy, Tim McDowell, called me recently, and he calls and he goes, hey, Cal, it's Tim. I'm like, okay, right. I have no idea who. And he started talking to me. I had sold him his house 21 years prior to, and he wanted to know if he should change the siding because it's white right now and his wife wants yellow. And I'm like, well, when are you going to sell it, Tim? And he goes, probably 2 to 3 years. He goes, but we're definitely going to call you. And I'm like, and then it dawned on me, I'm like, Tim and Penny McDowell. I'm like, oh yeah, the big white colonial. I'm like, no, you're not citing that. It'll cost you 20 grand and you're never going to see that money back. And yellow isn't so it's funny because people remember you. Now, I had sold them their house 21 years ago and they had never come to any of our things, but I had invited them to things over the years. And because of their travel, their schedule, they were never able to. But he called me up like we had talked Thursday. Hey, Kel, it's Tim,
Right.
but that's what, they had never come to anything, but because you're constantly reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're having this party, love to have you come. They remembered me like we were on a first name basis. So that's
Right.
pretty cool.
And it comes so natural too. Like you said, I mean, when you are doing in-person things, pull people together, pizza, wine, whatever, that's not, I mean, I guess it's considered work, but it's really not really work. I mean, you're not digging a ditch, you know what I mean? It's actually kind of cool.
It's a fun write-off.
Yeah, and right off, exactly, right off. One of the things I want to ask you about too is one of the similar things in our background is that you were with Keller Williams for many years. When I first got my license, I actually hung my license with Remax. That was very short lived. I don't even think I was there 6 months. The guy who was training me at the time decided to make a move to Keller Williams, and at the time, I guess that was what 2000 or 2007, and he said, the reason, Brian, you're a new agent, I want to bring you over with me is because Keller Williams has the best training, you know, in the country, frankly. And I said, okay, well, wherever you go, John, I'll go with you. He might even be watching, John Donahue. But anyway, it was interesting because back then, nobody really knew who Keller Williams was.
No.
It was, right? Weicker, Wydell, Remax, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Keller what? Especially up in the Northeast, in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. It's like, Keller what, right?
Yeah,
so
nobody
I was with them for many, many, many years. And I literally just 6 months ago, I made a move to the remote virtual brokerage EXP. And it's funny, Kelly, because I had no idea that you also had switched and gone to EXP.
Right.
And being in the industry, I had received so many Facebook messages, text messages, phone calls, probably going back 2.5 years. And people are saying, oh, there's this brokerage. I'm like, dude, I'm not really interested. I'm with Keller. I'm with there for a long time.
Right.
I'm not even an active agent. I just kind of have my license. I'm not listing homes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm good. Fast forward, here we are, and it's like for me.
I will call you back. Sorry.
Patrick?
No, it's a guy with a counter offer, but
oh, there you go. Well, we won't be much longer. It's okay.
After 1, and so it's 10:31. He calls me right now.
Right.
Sorry,
so long story short is what I'm now doing as an additional revenue stream, of the many that I have, is building out a team of agents just nationwide saying, hey, look, have you seen this EXP model? And for me, now that I understand it, it's really a no-brainer. I mean, a remote cloud-based virtual brokerage. I tell people, hey, think about Blockbuster back then, and now you have Netflix. Just a few little analogies, but when it comes to the numbers, I'm like, look, it's an 80-20 split. And when that 20% you give EXP hits 16 grand, you cap, you're at 100%. Oh, and by the way, that 16 grand you get back in the form of stock options, revenue share, et cetera. So it's 100% brokerage. And the model, it's funny, a good friend of mine was with a brokerage called Exit Realty. And they had a similar model where you basically work with people, et cetera. But what I liked about this model, because I do know people nationwide, thanks to my course and coaching and all, is that I can know an agent in Texas, in California, in Boston, right? And if they see the model and they're like, yeah, it makes sense, and they come over, every time they close a deal, I get a little cut. And it's just this referral. People say, well, is it network marketing like MLM? No, it's not. It's more of a tiered affiliate model is the way I describe it. So you're getting paid a referral, but then you get a little cut of referral, like 7 levels, whatever. So it's more of a tiered affiliate model, but it's awesome. And I guess a professional 7-figure earner like yourself, all these years in the business, what made you decide to leave Keller, which is a great company, but what made you decide to leave?
Great. Keller is a great company, and like you're talking about the education, I like literally my blood was red, like literally Keller Williams red. Like I graduated from Bold 11 to 10 times, Bold Leadership once. If anybody's KW, they know what I'm talking about. I absolutely loved Keller Williams. I also believe that anything that ever comes down the pike, it was always important to go interview with them, because I always want to know what my competition's doing. So over the 14 years that I was with KW, I probably interviewed 23, 24, 25 different places, because when somebody would call me and say, hey, Kelly, I'd like to buy you lunch, I was like, bring it.
Yeah.
What you got? So I always wanted to hear what they had to say. And I would always go back and I go, oh, I met with so-and-so and we got that. We're better than that. Oh, they don't even have profit share. They don't even have. So when EXP, I heard one of my friends said, you got to hear what EXP has to offer. So I heard it out. And once that saying, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It was like, this was everything that I knew at Keller Williams. Yet it made a lot more sense economically, education wise. I mean, I used to drive in to teach classes. half an hour there, teach the class, half an hour back. Now it's like, hey, team, let's get on. They're doing this, special train. There's hundreds of trainings to pick from. There's stock options. I didn't have that before. There's revenue share, which is way better than profit share, which is what Keller Williams had. It was almost like everything that Keller Williams had on steroids is the only way that I know how to say it. And it took me a couple months because literally I loved Keller Williams. It took me a couple months to but I couldn't unsee it.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too. It's like when I talk to a lot of Keller agents, and I really haven't put much time into really working with EXP. I'm the rest of this year, I'm going to be spending and dedicating more time to that. When we spoke about that earlier, and to me, it's being a businessman, an entrepreneur. Let's just talk numbers, right? If you're a Keller agent, you're on a 64-36 split for the most part, with some variation around the country. This is 80-20. So automatically you're making more out of each closing, period. Most brokerages, it's like 26 grand to cap. Is Keller recap also?
33.
30. So let's be fair and say 26.
Right.
EXP 16. So that's a $10,000 savings right there. So
we save $91,000 a year just for my team to go over there.
Right.
Now and that's a lot of money in my people's pockets,
yes,
too. Not just mine, my agents,
Mm-hmm.
Them taking home a check for $8 grand instead of 6,400.
Yeah.
1,600 is a lot of money. And when you start breaking it down, and I went to them because I literally was like the cheerleader for Keller Williams, like, give me the red pom-poms. Yeah. And I said, guys, this is something I have to discuss with you. And like, there wasn't a jaw that I had to pick back up and go, I know this sounds crazy. However, I want you to hear me out. And so.
Well, and that's the thing too. And then you could refer people nationwide. So it's, I think it's interesting because a lot of agents, they've been thinking of making a move or they would like to make more money. And like me, I ignored phone calls and messages, Kelly, for 2.5 years until a good friend of mine basically told me what he was making every month on his revenue share. And I said, wait a minute, that's not even from your own personal production. It's like, no, I don't even do house anymore, dude. He goes, I'm on the investing side, whatever. He said, but I built a team, had a few people, and it just spread around the country. And let's just say it was a 6-figure monthly side income.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. Yeah. Like I said, whoa.
And especially now, yeah, especially now it's still young. It's the fastest growing company because of the models that it has, and it's still young. So the people that, that old, when you get in early, well, it's true. There's going to be millionaires coming out of that just on the revenue share. Yeah,
it's starting to attract some different people. Interestingly enough, I just saw somebody posted on Facebook, the guy Tarek from one of those home flipping shows, like on HGTV. Oh, yeah. Remember, he was married to the blonde, and I guess she, screwed the plumber or whatever happened. That whole drama. But he made,
for Tarek.
Yeah, exactly. But he made this big announcement. Now he's with EXP, and good friends of mine, the Montalongos, from the real estate education space, not Armando, but Montalina, her husband David, made the switch. So yeah, it seems like it's really picking up speed and steam, and so I don't want to be left behind. So I'm going to be dedicating more time to that moving forward this year. But no, that's great, Kelly.
That's what I said to you earlier. I said that it's one of my goals because I know that snowball is starting to roll. Yeah. And I want to jump in before it's colossal and I'm on the outside. I want to jump in while it's still.
Nobody wants to be late to the dance, right? So,
right.
Well, that aside, so we talked about your EXP and why the remote, and again, I think this whole interview series and what I'm building this brand is about being virtual. We're going to be speaking to chiropractors. We're going to be speaking to, interestingly enough, wait till that one. But the point is, it's a new world, and I think one of the things that we've really come to realize, a lot of agents and some of the few that actually weren't interested in hearing about EXP per se, they love their office and they need to go into an office. Well, how's that working out for you 36 days in? You know what I mean? So I think one thing that people have realized, and by, not by choice, let's say by force, the kids are being homeschooled. Kids are learning with Zoom, right? People are working from home. They're set up with Zoom, and people, realtors, all professions are working remotely, and they figured out that, hey, this can happen. Huh?
I'm wearing pajama bottoms.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. We all are. Yeah, look, I'm wearing a dress shirt, but I'm wearing sweatpants. Right. So go figure. But yeah, so it's funny. But Kelly, any last tips for those agents that want to work remotely and start getting listings remotely, not knowing how long this is going to continue to last, but because you're so successful, what are some final closing thoughts or tips that you'd like to share with agents that want to do more business? They want to make more money and they want to do it virtually because they kind of have to now anyway.
Right. So, well, first off, like we do a class like once a week right now on, so if anybody has any interest, you can either reach out to me, Kelly Duncan Smith, or Brian Mira, and I can pop you into one of these classes. That is all we're doing is literally saying this is what a buyer, this Tuesday at 1 o'clock, Tracy Gagne and I are doing a pretend listing. She's going to be the seller, and she's a good friend of mine, so I'm sure she'll give me a hard time.
Right.
And I'm going to be the agent, so you can actually see the process that we go through. So that's pretty cool. But I would say just be you. Reach out to people, check on them, see how they're doing. Say, are you working? How are the kids? What's going on? Are you working? Well, Frank's not working, but I'm working from home right now, but we don't know how long that's going to last. And right, it's a little scary right now. Do you know, this is another thing I share with people. Did you know that there's different things that you can apply for? Like, people don't know, like small businesses or different things. Like I talked to somebody the other day, they didn't even know the stimulus thing. I'm like, how do you not know that? But they didn't know it, so share with them what's going on and just offer your help in any way that you can.
One thing that I thought that's a great suggestion. And I was just talking to somebody earlier this week about this. Something you can provide of value to people as you're reaching out to them and checking in with them is let them know the difference between a forbearance and a deference. So what's happening is a lot of people are hearing through the grapevine, or they read something on Facebook that, hey, I can not pay my mortgage because of this crisis for the next, let's just use an example of 3 months. And they call their bank and they go on a forbearance plan and they think life is great. And, oh, honey, you know what? Income's stopped or it's reduced and we don't have to pay our mortgage for 3 months. But with a forbearance, guys, and if you're not aware of this, please pay attention. What's going to happen is, yes, you don't pay for 3 months. Let's use the example. You don't pay for April, May, and June. Come July, you owe all 4 payments. You owe all 4 payments. And people, if they can't modify, you're going to see people losing their homes. You're going to see foreclosures. You're going to see short sales. These things are going to happen because of people's ignorance. And if you let them know that not to go on a forbearance, they want to get a deference. They want to defer the payments, tack them onto the end of the loan so that come month 4, in this example, they pick up where they left off. And most importantly, get it in writing, because you don't know who you're talking to. That customer service rep is just reading off a script, blah, blah, blah. You want to get it in writing that you're deferring the payments. It's not a forbearance. And just you could reach out to every homeowner, prospective, client, let them know this, and you're doing them a great service, because a lot of people are going to get caught in that trap. And it's sad. It just is. So that's one thing I want to add in there, I think you muted yourself. I guess your phone's ringing again, or is it the dog?
The dogs are barking, the phone's ringing.
That's all right.
Right? Welcome to homework.
Welcome to the real world, baby. I got my kids yelling. I'm like, listen, I'm going to be live. I was like, you got to be quiet. I still hear them screaming down there. So what are you going to do?
Whatever. The dog's barking, the husband's calling, whatever.
I hear you.
The other thing before we hang up that I think is really, really important is I love the forbearance as far as deferred. That's huge. Yeah. The other thing is right now, people, if you've been in your house 5 or 6 years, your interest rate might be 5-6%. Right now, interest rates are ridiculously low. So if you are still working, you're in a position. I mean, I've got tremendous mortgage lenders. Brian's got tremendous mortgage lenders. Like, the more that we can keep the economy surging and going right now, the better off that we're all going to be when we get on the other side of this. Because let's face it, the world has changed. It's never going back to where it was. Never. It's going to be a different version, might even be a better version, but it's never going back to where it was.
Never going back. Going back. Well, Kelly, I know you got to run. You got a million things going on. You got to feed your dog, or he's got to go to the bathroom. I don't know. But anyway, so thank you for coming on with us today. We'll certainly be talking soon. I think, you probably, I hope, gave some inspiration to a lot of people that they can really do well in this current state of affairs that we're in. And even when things start to open back up, I think people's eyes are going to be open that they could probably operate in a different, more efficient way. Guys, if you have no idea what we were talking about with this brokerage called EXP, reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions and show you why I made the move. You heard Kelly, and we could have that discussion. But other than that, guys, I just want to thank you again, Kelly. Thank you. Say hi to Patrick for me. Guys, as always, God bless you. Be safe. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Kelly. Bye, guys. See you next Friday.